Welcome to Cupid's Corner, where love stories come alive. Sit back, relax, and let the tales of romance sweep you off your feet.
Prairie winds and promises. The wind swept across the wide-open plains, carrying with it the scent of new earth and untold promise. Abe Marshall paused in the middle of his field, wiping the sweat from his brow as he looked out across the endless horizon. His homestead, a modest cabin, stood like a sentinel against the vastness of the Kansas wilderness. It had been a year since he staked his claim here, trading his Union soldier's rifle for a farmer's plow. The scars of war still ran deep, but out here, away from the blood and smoke, he had found something that resembled peace if only he could keep it. "Abe!" A voice called out from behind, carrying on the wind. He turned to see Daniel Carter, one of the few men in the settlement who had arrived not long after him. They had formed an uneasy friendship, bound more by circumstance than anything else. Abe was a quiet man, preferring the solitude of his land and his thoughts, but Daniel had a way of pulling people in. Abe couldn't deny that the settlement needed men like him. "There's news from town," Daniel said, his expression tight. "And it ain't good." Abe sighed, planting his shovel into the dirt. "What now?" Daniel's face darkened. "Word is that some folks from Greenwood ain't too happy about us being here. They've been stirrin' trouble, saying this land don't belong to us freedmen. They might come poking round here soon." Abe clenched his jaw. He had suspected as much. Despite the promises of the Homestead Act, there were still those who saw black settlers as invaders on land they believed belonged to them alone. He had fought for this land with his sweat, his blood, and his belief in a future beyond chains. He wasn't about to give it up now. "I'll be ready," Abe said, his voice firm. Daniel gave a nod, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You might want to let Naomi know too. She's been getting things organized for the schoolhouse, and she needs to be aware of the dangers." At the mention of Naomi's name, Abez's heart did an unfamiliar twist. He hadn't spoken much with her since she arrived 3 months ago, but he had seen her tall, graceful, with a quiet determination in her eyes that reminded him of soldiers he'd fought beside. She had come from the east, they said, sent to educate the children of freedmen in the settlement. And though she was young, barely 30, her presence commanded respect. "I'll go see her," Abe said, though he wasn't quite sure why he volunteered. Maybe it was the way her presence seemed to stir something deep within him, something he had long buried since the war. Or maybe it was the fact that she was building something of her own, just like him. Whatever the reason, he found himself heading toward the small makeshift schoolhouse that Naomi had set up at the edge of the settlement. Naomi Richards stood at the front of the schoolhouse, her hands brushing against the worn pages of her teaching book. She looked out at the small group of children before her, their wide eyes filled with hope and curiosity. This was why she had come, to offer them something more than survival, to give them a future they could believe in. But even as she taught them their letters and numbers, she felt the weight of the unrest stirring in Greenwood. She had heard the rumors, seen the suspicious glances when she had visited town for supplies. The settlers here were unwelcome to some, despite the law being on their side. The door creaked open behind her, and Naomi turned to see Abe Marshall standing in the doorway, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. The children all looked up at him with wide-eyed admiration. Abe was something of a mystery to them, a war hero turned farmer, a man who kept to himself but commanded respect with every movement. "Abe," Naomi greeted him, wiping her hands on her apron. "What brings you here?" He nodded toward the children before looking back at her. "We need to talk." Naomi's stomach knotted. "Is it about Greenwood?" Abez's eyes darkened, and he gave a slight nod. "Daniel's heard word. Trouble's brewing. They don't like that we're here. Could be coming sooner than we think." Naomi's heart skipped a beat, but she steadied herself. "What do we do?" Abez's gaze was hard, but there was a softness beneath it. "We prepare. But you need to be careful, Naomi. The school, it's important, but it also makes you a target." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. She had known that coming out here wouldn't be easy, but the reality of the danger felt more palpable now than ever. I won't abandon the children, Naomi said, her voice firm. This school is their future. Abe stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers. I know that. I'm not asking you to leave. Just, be cautious. For a moment, they stood there, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Naomi had seen the way Abe looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. He was a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but there was a kindness in him that tugged at her heart. She couldn't deny that she had felt a pull toward him since the day she arrived. I'll be careful, Naomi said softly. But I can't stop doing what's right, Abe. He nodded, his expression softening. Neither can I. The days passed in a blur of preparation. The men of the settlement gathered to discuss strategies, while the women worked to fortify their homes and ensure the children were kept safe. Naomi continued to teach, though the shadow of danger loomed ever closer. Abe found himself drawn to the schoolhouse more and more, offering his help in small ways, fixing the roof, reinforcing the windows, checking the perimeter. Each time he came, Naomi was there, her quiet strength pulling him in despite his instinct to remain distant. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, Abe lingered outside the schoolhouse after finishing his work. Naomi was packing up her books, her fingers brushing the worn pages with reverence. He watched her for a moment, his heart beating a little faster than he'd like to admit. You've done a lot for the schoolhouse, Naomi said, her voice cutting through the silence. Thank you. Abe shifted on his feet, unsure of how to respond. Just doing what I can. Naomi turned to face him, her eyes meeting his. There was something in her gaze that made his breath catch, a vulnerability, a softness that he hadn't seen before. For a moment, the world seemed to slow, the wind whispering around them as they stood on the edge of something unspoken. Abe, she began, but her words faltered, as if she wasn't sure what to say next. Before he could think better of it, Abe stepped closer, his hand reaching out to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. The touch was light, tentative, but it sent a shiver down Naomi's spine. She looked up at him, her lips parting as if to say something, but no words came. And then, in the fading light of the Kansas sunset, Abe leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a soft, hesitant kiss. Naomi's breath hitched, and for a moment, time stood still. The kiss was gentle, almost like a question, and when she kissed him back, it felt like an answer. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the warmth of his touch and the steady beat of their hearts. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, the air between them charged with something electric. I'm sorry, Abe said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't mean to. Naomi shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. Don't apologize. Abe's eyes searched hers, as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had been alone for so long, locked in his own world of pain and survival. But in that kiss, something had shifted, something that scared him as much as it thrilled him. We can't ignore what's happening, Naomi said, her voice steady. But we can't ignore this either. Abe nodded slowly, his hand still resting against her cheek. I know. For a long moment, they stood there in the quiet of the evening, the prairie winds swirling around them as if carrying their unspoken promises. There was still work to be done, still battles to be fought, but for the first time in a long while, Abe felt like he wasn't fighting alone. As tensions with Greenwood grew, so did Abe and Naomi's bond. They spent more time together, not just working on the schoolhouse or preparing for the potential conflict, but sharing stories of their pasts, Abe's time in the war, Naomi's journey from the east, and their hopes for the future. One night, as they sat by the fire outside Abe's cabin, Naomi rested her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and for the first time, Abe allowed himself to imagine a life beyond the struggle, one where he and Naomi could build something lasting, something worth fighting for. But that future was threatened when word came that a group of men from Greenwood were on their way, intent on driving the settlers off the land. The settlers gathered together, determined to stand their ground, but the tension in the air was palpable. We'll face this together, Naomi said, her hand gripping Abez as they prepared for what was to come. Abe nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. He had fought battles before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting the people he had come to care for, the life he had started to build with Naomi. In the morning the men from Greenwood arrived, the settlement was ready. Abe stood at the front, his rifle in hand, Naomi by his side. The air was thick with tension, but there was a sense of unity among the settlers that couldn't be shaken. The confrontation was brief but tense, with the men from Greenwood shouting threats and demanding they leave. But the settlers stood firm, and when it became clear they weren't going to back down, the men eventually retreated, their anger simmering but unspent. As the dust settled and the threat passed, Abe turned to Naomi, pulling her into his arms. The kiss they shared this time was different, deeper, more certain. It wasn't just a kiss of passion, but of promise, a vow that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. As they stood there, surrounded by their fellow settlers, the prairie winds carrying the scent of freedom and hope, Abe knew that he had found something worth fighting for, something worth holding on to. And for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to believe in a future filled with love and possibility. The end.
Thank you for listening. Let's spread the love. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because everyone deserves a bit of romance.